Exxon obviously took responsibility for that as a massive cleanup exercise. But what happened was that the tidal flow, the natural tidal flow, actually seemed to change with the objective of getting the oil out into the Pacific Ocean. And once the oil is out in the ocean, then seawater does what it does naturally, which is breaks it up. Now, unfortunately, the Gulf of Mexico doesn't have that tidal rate. So this is adding to the magnitude of the problem, because the oil is not being sucked out into the Atlantic Ocean, where it could be spread over a much wider area, and then the natural process of being broken down would occur. Because, I mean, one thing that perhaps a lot of people don't realize is that crude oil is seeping naturally into the oceans of the world at a phenomenal rate on a daily basis. But but that's happening, spread right across the planet. So consequently, the sea does what it does naturally, and it breaks it down, and it's not any kind of hazard. But what's occurring in the Gulf is obviously everything is now congealing. And what really does concern me is that what we're seeing right now is only stage one of this potential nightmare, which is the oil obviously making its way onto the Louisiana, the Mississippi, and very soon the Florida and the Texas coastline. But we are now into the hurricane season. Hurricane season in the U.S. officially starts on the 1st of June. And what will happen is that hurricanes that come through the Gulf or even originate in the Gulf will suck up the polluted water into the atmosphere, and then it will take it out to sea, and then it will return to landfall. And what we will see is that the hurricanes that come through the Gulf of Mexico over the next 3.5 months, they are going to, and those ones that reach landfall, they are going to deposit acidic rain right across the effective area, which is really the southeastern seaboard of the U.S. So everything from Texas right through Florida, right up through the Carolinas, and over the next sort of 3-4 months, these areas are going to be subjected to very acidic rain. That rain is going to obviously enter into the water table. So potentially what we're looking at is this disaster poisoning the water supply of a very, very significant chunk of the United States of America. And this, of course, hasn't been really discussed or perhaps even realized by the majority of people at this moment in time. Meanwhile, BP are desperately trying to salvage their company because their reputation is shot. I mean, there's no question about that, and I actually don't see how BP can survive this disaster. Wow. The stock market value of BP is dumping as we speak. But I've had a lot of emails from people saying or asking the question, was this deliberate? I don't believe it was deliberate. I believe that there's certainly a catalogue of errors. It's certainly seen, based on some of the information I've seen, that there were individuals who were cutting corners, which is outrageous. I mean, in all my time in the oil industry, I mean, if anybody was ever found to be compromising the integrity of total health and safety practices, then I mean, it was instant dismissal. That was absolutely something that was sacrosanct. So I'm absolutely shocked to read some of the accounts that I've read. But there again, of course, they may be just being put out to try and cover somebody trying to cover their own butt.
Sorry, go on.
That said, okay, to the question of was it deliberate, I think the answer is, in my opinion, is no. But what was occurring here is this well, right, which was being drilled through 5,000 feet of seawater, and then down a further 15,000 feet into the substrata. So, we're talking a well depth here of close on 4 miles, including the Gulf. But what was happening here, this was the limit of BP's drilling technology. And what they just weren't prepared for was the phenomenal pressure of this particular reservoir. And the most outrageous decision that I've read about here was somebody taking the decision to plug the well with seawater as opposed to a drilling fluid, i.e. a drilling mud. And this is completely outrageous because it's a common practice to plug a well before you bring it on stream, but normally you would plug it with a mud. Now, a barite mud has a specific gravity of 4.2, whereas seawater has a specific gravity of 1.25. So to use a mud, you're talking, talking a phenomenal difference. And if it's true, if it's correct that somebody took the decision to try and balance this well with seawater, I mean, that is completely outrageous. And that individual or those individuals should be identified and certainly brought before the courts to explain their actions. And if for no other reason, I mean, everybody else in the oil industry needs to understand what occurred here to make damn sure it doesn't happen again. But, that said, the magnitude of this particular event is enormous, and I suspect the enormity of it is only going to be realized in the coming months as the hurricane season progresses.
Okay, I've got lots of questions, Ian, from listeners, and if we do them in a quick-fire approach, because there's too many to go through in the time that we have. First of all I have a question from someone who's anonymous. Does Ian have any plans to team up with George Galloway on the Iranian-based Press TV? I don't know what that means, but maybe you do.
Specifically, no, but suffice to say that I do have some TV projects in line, but I think that in the coming months we will find that events unfold at such a phenomenal rate that those of us who have a lot in common in terms of our desire to expose the magnitude of the crimes being committed will team up. And although we won't form any kind of organization because that's not the way we're going to work, there will be certainly how shall I say, collective individualism, groups of people coming together who are like-minded.
Okay, so Rebecca asked the question, with the global consciousness raising each decade, the people who are realizing who we really are as divine creation and less people being willing to be influenced by the media growing each year, won't this eventually blow itself out naturally? So, in other words, the effect of the Zionists and the media, etc., won't it be absolutely falling on deaf ears eventually?
I think ultimately, yes, I would say that's a pretty astute observation. But I mean, let's look at some of the things we haven't touched on, because these guys are doing their level best to either shut down or certainly slow down, but ultimately shut down that awakening process. I mean, we haven't even touched on things like GM foods, vaccinations, fluoridation of drinking water, chemtrails. I mean, all of these things, we're talking a multi-dimensional agenda here, and all of it is effectively geared to slow down and in their minds, ideally shut down the awakening process. So, let's recognize that, we have a pretty tough adversary to deal with.
Absolutely, and they've been at it for a few centuries.
I would say a few millennia.
Right. Absolutely, and okay, so thank you for that. And I know we can talk for hours and hours just on stuff like Codex
Alimentarius. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
right.
Yeah.
We can talk about that, and that's perhaps for another show. Stuart asked regarding the Zionist agenda, why does nobody stand up to these people?
Oh, I mean, literally, I have just come back from speaking at a deep politics conference in California, and the organizers were outraged about a number of issues that I broached in the course of my presentation. But, the power of organizations like the Anti-Defamation League are phenomenal. And, this is a very, very powerful organization, and there's a very powerful lobby group called AIPAC, the America-Israel Public Affairs Committee in the U.S., and anybody who dares raise their head above the parapet to start talking about the Zionist agenda is immediately targeted. I mean, it has a smear campaign launched upon them. And so even people like Alex Jones elect to take the easy route, which is just not go there. So,